everybody, and thank you for tuning in to ChasingCinema.com's official podcast. Thank you. I hope you've been tuning in to us since the beginning. I hope you've listened to all 39 episodes, but just in case you haven't and you are a newcomer, well, I welcome you to the podcast where me and my co-host talk about the world of motion pictures. I am one of your hosts, Jacob Toronto, and I'm joined by my loyal, faithful co-host / best friend,
Louis Corzolo.
And there's a lot to talk about today in very little time. We're going to be talking about American Sniper, The Wedding Ringer, and we're also going to be talking about Black Hat, the new film from Michael Mann. We're going to try to talk about some Academy Awards, but we're just going to kind of play this episode by ear. So let's hop right into it because we just want to tackle everything we can. Let's talk The Wedding Ringer. Louis, how do you feel about Kevin Hart? How do you feel about him, and how do you feel about the movies he's done?
I'm sure we've had this conversation in the past before on this podcast. We're both relatively big Kevin Hart fans.
Yes.
We like his personality. We love his stand-up. We find him very funny. He's very enthusiastic. Has high energy. He's very enjoyable to watch. His choice of movies, on the other hand, haven't been the best. And I don't know if you can blame him because it is all part of marketing, getting his name out there. Because in the past couple years, his whole brand has gotten bigger and bigger. He's in almost every other movie coming out, especially comedy-wise. So you have to respect that to some degree. But like most comedians, it's hard to translate stand-up success into movie success. But I like him. I still like him. He did hosted SNL for the second time, and again, he's fun to watch.
Yeah, I think his stand-up is really great. I'm a huge Kevin Hart fan. Ever since I saw Seriously Funny, that's when I really was like, this guy's awesome. He's really funny. And I mean, the man brought back stand-up to theaters, which, hadn't been since, I think, Eddie Murphy's Raw or a little bit before, maybe something after. But, the man, really brought stand-up back on fire to where people would actually pay movie tickets to go and watch it in a theater. But as you said, his movie choices have been pretty bad. I think that every studio that works with him just wants him to do what he does on stand-up and be the same guy, that same character, not really realizing that, he is a character on stage, though it is probably very much like him and who he is as a person. All in all, stand-up is a presence, and it's a presence that you kind of build up. And if he wants to act, and he really wants to act, then he's going to have to develop different characters and develop different, different modes. One of my favorite comedians working today in the business, who also is falling in the same kind of trouble, is Melissa McCarthy, who I think is greatly funny. I think she has a lot of diversity, but unfortunately, ever since Bridesmaids, every movie that she's in, they want her to be, Megan from Bridesmaids, and I think that's a problem. And what happens is, they squeeze out every last drop of that kind of gag until the point where it's like listening to the same song on the radio, and you just kind of get over it and you move on. Kevin Hart, I started feeling the same way where, he did Think Like a Man, which he was funny in. And then he did Ride Along, which I was like, eh. And then he did Think Like a Man 2, and I'm like, oh my God, Kevin Hart, do something different, man. And then he has this movie coming out called The Wedding Ringer, the new film where him and Josh Gad, who is mostly known to the world as Olaf the Snowman from Frozen, and it's about a gentleman buying a best man and groomsman. Now, when I first saw the trailer of this movie, I was very, very skeptical. I really didn't think this movie looks good. It looked very tacky. It looked very stereotypical. Louis, what were your thoughts? I know you didn't end up getting to see the movie, but what were your thoughts when watching the trailers?
Pretty much the same. Generic comedy comes out early in the year that you forget by June.
I wanted him to do something different. It looked like he was going to do the same thing.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I watched the film, and overall, I didn't like it. I didn't like the movie that much. I didn't really laugh that much, but there are some positives I have to mention when talking about this movie. I didn't feel Kevin Hart played Kevin Hart, which was nice. I mean, granted, Kevin Hart wasn't taking a performing journey and trying to be someone different and incredible and really searching through character and all that, but he didn't do the same things. He didn't make jokes about his height. He wasn't referring to his stand-up. He was playing this comedic character that didn't call for much. So for him, I'm glad that he did that, and I'm hoping that the more roles he gets, he doesn't play that stand-up Kevin Hart character. Moving forward, Josh Gad and him worked great together. They had chemistry. It was just lazy and uncreative material that is why this movie's failed, unfortunately. I think there's one scene that I really, really enjoyed, and it's a dancing scene the two share, and even though it is the most unoriginal part of the movie, because we've seen this type of thing so often, it just still works because their chemistry is so strong. But my feelings of the movie was just that it felt lazy. It felt really uncreative. None of it really flowed. It kind of felt all over the place, you know. And then while sitting in this movie, all I could think about was, I've seen this movie before, and it was from 2009, and it starred Paul Rudd and Jason Segel, and it was called I Love You, Man. Though it's not necessarily the same premise, it told a way better story with a lot more heart, and it was 10 times funnier. Or more funny, whatever proper way you want to say it. But I thought it was right. As soon as I left the Wedding Ringer, though I didn't hate it. I didn't hate this movie. I didn't think it was the worst thing ever made. But it was pretty bad. But it wasn't one that upset me where I was like, ugh. Because I actually read my review, I actually kind of talk about a lot of things that I liked about the movie. There just wasn't a lot. But I went home and I watched I Love You, Man, because I think it's a far better film, and it did it, 10 times better. So that is my review for The Wedding Ringer. If you want to read more about it, go to chasingcinema.com/wedding-ringer, and you can read all about it. Moving on, Louis, a film that was nominated for Best Picture this week by the Academy Awards, Clint Eastwood's new film American Sniper, which did not receive any Golden Globe nominations. How did you feel about American... Well, why don't you tell us what American Sniper is about first?
Well, American Sniper is based on the tragic life of Chris Kyle, a native Texan who enlisted into the Army and joined the Navy SEAL after 9/11. It follows his life, his 4 different tours of Iraq, and then his eventual return home and his juggling of getting reconnected with his family and society. Listen, American Sniper has been gaining a lot of controversies, and I definitely do not want to get into each of these controversies because I have not read the book. Neither have you. This is fairly new to us, and his life is fairly new to us. So we're just going to focus on the film because a lot of people are saying the film has been very misleading, and that may be very true. But for us, this is a new story, a new character to dissect. And in terms of film, this is probably one of Clint Eastwood's better works in recent years. Jersey Boys was mostly hit and miss. Trouble with the Curve came and went. This is actually Clint Eastwood's probably tightest, most well put together film since maybe Gran Torino. It was extremely intense, extremely emotional. Clint Eastwood did a great job filming the combat scenes to the more personal scenes with just Bradley Cooper as Chris Kyle and his relationship with his wife. It's a very, very solid film. I don't think it's great by any means. I don't think it tries to stretch the genre. We're talking about PTSD, and it's a very serious condition that many military veterans suffer through, and they do give you a glimpse inside that. But I don't think this film does enough to open up the topic and discuss it fully. It gives you a glimpse, and that's about it, which is kind of disappointing because this film could have went the extra mile and showed you the true struggles of many people face. But the main highlight of this film, if you're going to watch this film and talk about this film, it's because of Bradley Cooper's excellent performance as Chris Kyle. Every year it seems like we've been saying, oh, this is Bradley Cooper's best performance. This is Bradley Cooper's best performance. But again, we're saying this again because it really is his best performance today. He was phenomenal as Chris Kyle. He embodied the spirit, the attitude, the mindset of this person. And it's you kind of forget you're watching Bradley Cooper. There's many scenes where it's just him and the gun, or him at the bar, or just him just collecting his thoughts, and you just see so much emotion, so much thought, so much pain in this man's eyes and this man's face, and even his posture changes throughout the movie, and it's just great to watch, and it's a terrific performance. It's the reason why, people are talking about this movie because of Bradley Cooper, and he definitely deserved the Oscar nom for Best Actor. It's he gives everything he has in this film, and you could see his dedication to the craft worked well.
And to talk about this movie, I want everyone to understand something, because when we review movies like this or religious films or anything like that, people tend to kind of forget that there is a line of what we do. Me and Louis, though Chris Kyles was a real human being, and like you said, we haven't read the book, we don't know the person. When we talk about Chris Kyles, we're not talking about the actual man. Me and Louis are talking about a character. Though he is a real man, we are judging. If I say something about Chris Kyles as Bradley Cooper is Chris Kyle, then I'm not judging the man. I'm not judging what he did or what happened. I'm judging a character in a movie. And I just want to make that very clear, because one of my biggest problems with the movie is, though I agree with majority of what Louis said. Actually, I probably agree with everything he said. I don't know if this is my favorite Bradley Cooper performance. I definitely think it is one of his better performances.
Yeah, I'm not saying it's my favorite either.
Yeah,
but you gotta give where credit's due.
Absolutely. But my major issue with this movie is that Chris Kyle felt too good. He felt too straight, in the sense that there's maybe one scene that kind of alludes to him doing something bad, and it's because of something where he's all one way, wants to help the country. He's not deterred. I mean, the only really negative kind of sense is the lack of his needing to be home. But to me, it still never really kind of showed his bad side or negative sense, where he didn't feel like a real human being to me, as much as he just felt like the all-American, the real-life Captain America. But that wasn't a major distraction in the film for me. Going on, I felt that the other characters besides Chris Kyles were used as props more than characters, especially his wife. I can't remember her name off the top of my head. Louis, do you remember it or no?
Well, it's played by Sienna Miller.
That's what I was looking for. So Sienna Miller, who, has the capability, as we see in a few scenes, to really deliver and keep up with Cooper's performance. I don't say it was as good, because they didn't really give her character anything to do except come home. I mean, they didn't really make her a full character. And instead of making Chris look one way and then just kind of every other character just being there, they were like props Chris just had to use or encounter, rather than actually being a part of the film, being a whole character. I would say those are my major problems with the movie, as well as the fact that, and here's the thing, I know it sounds like I'm kind of just having my issues, but I thoroughly enjoyed this movie. I thought it was a great film. I think it was one of Clint Eastwood's best, especially out of his recent work. It just wasn't a 4 out of 4. It wasn't a perfect movie. I'm a little bit surprised by its nomination for Best Picture.
Well, the Academy does love Eastwood and anything he does.
Yeah.
And maybe because it's one of his better films in recent years, like, oh my God, he's back. Instant nomination. But,
But as Louis pointed out, and even me and him talked about it while I was watching the movie, the major issue is that this movie feels like it has something to say, but never says it. The movie concentrates on this man coming back home, and when you watch the trailer, the whole movie is appealing to the fact that this man comes back different. Granted, I thought that the scenes where he is making decisions of when to shoot, if to shoot, are really great. But, as we talked about before, at some point in time, a movie's not about, a situation. It's how these characters react to that situation. And I never felt like I got the full reaction from him. I never really felt that I understood his whole, everything about his PTSD, even though we saw it in other characters somewhat. It never really kind of talked up it never brought me in there, and never really allowed me to see how it was affecting him, except for, him turning his head really quick, or snapping at the dog. But even those scenes didn't, those are great setup scenes to an explosion, or to something that let us know, and maybe it didn't happen in real life. Maybe it didn't have an explosion. But when you're talking cinematically, we need something like that. Otherwise, it just feels like it's not important. So that was my only real criticism. Otherwise, I really enjoyed the scenes. I thought the movie was very tense. I thought it was very harsh, and very difficult to watch at times. But a great portrait of a man, that did something really amazing for this country. Really, really powerful stuff. And I'm glad Clint Eastwood kind of tackled this powerful project, especially after doing some light stuff, especially compared to this. But overall, I enjoyed it, so I was glad to see it, and I think Bradley Cooper did great.
Yeah, it's definitely worth the watch, and it's making over like 100 million.
Yeah, it's doing well
this weekend, and it's like setting records for January films. So people are definitely intrigued by it. I definitely want to go see it. So there's no reason why you shouldn't.
Yeah, out of everything that people have been asking me about over the holiday season, like around Christmas, and up to now, people are asking me about American Sniper. So a lot of people are really interested in seeing it and watching it. So I'm glad that it's doing well, though. On the opposite side of the theater, there is a new film from director Michael Mann, who the world has come to know, as the action storyteller that brought us Heat. He also brought us films like Miami Vice and Public Enemies. And now he is tackling a very, very modern trend, which is cybercrime and computer hacking. But as Tony Stark would say, we are not in the 80s. Hacking isn't even a word anymore. So I don't know what they call them. I'm assuming black hats and other words, rats and all these other words that I learned in the movie. But, the best way to explain it is a hacker. Starring Chris Hemsworth, that was made in 2013. So this movie has kind of spent a lot of time in La La Land waiting to be released, and now it is here. And this is Michael Mann's first film since Public Enemies, the 2009 film with Johnny Depp. A movie that I thought was okay, but not really that great, and a lot of people didn't think was that great. Louis, how do you feel about Michael Mann and some of his films?
Well, obviously, Michael Mann is an quote-unquote icon in his own right. He's done great films. I've always been a fan, especially of Heat. Who hasn't liked Heat? But The Last of the Mohicans, great. The Insider, I think it's overlooked in his filmography, which is another great one. I personally like Collateral. I think that's a very nice put-together film with Jamie Foxx, Tom Cruise. They did wonderful. But recently, it's been hit and miss. Ali, I wasn't crazy about. Miami Vice was hit or miss again. Public Enemies was a big disappointment. So it's been a while for fans of Michael Mann, to see Michael Mann at his best. And I don't know if this would be an opportunity to demonstrate that.
I keep muting the mic and forgetting to turn it back on. It's not that I mean, Michael Mann can be hit or miss, and like we said, Heat and Collateral. Those are movies that a lot of people are looking forward again, but lately hasn't necessarily delivered. But again, he hasn't made films in 5 years, so it's kind of a nice, well, not necessarily 5 years because he filmed in 2003 or 2013, but you get what I'm saying. But I think that it's a really interesting topic, especially after what we went through last year with the hacks at Target, and TSA. Well, not necessarily hacks at TSA, but like the release of TSA and how like people are so tapped into things. And Chase Bank, I believe, was also hacked, and I know a few other companies, and most importantly, Sony, which was hacked over, and literally almost stopped the release of a major motion picture here in the States, The Interview. I think it's a really great topic to kind of tackle, and very smart of him to go after it, even though this movie was made before the Sony hacks, and maybe before Target. I'm not sure exactly when Target was, but it's at a growing time where it is becoming more and more modern, and cybercrime is the way of crime is done now. And God of Thunder, the son of Odin himself, will be, on the computer cracking keyboards. So
Can't go wrong with that.
Louis did not get to see this picture, unfortunately. I did, and I felt neither love nor hate for this movie. I sat in my chair not feeling any real emotion this week watching the movies besides American Sniper, because I didn't really feel I didn't hate it, I didn't love them. There were really a lot of elements of Black Hat that I did not like, and I think they totally trumped the ones that I did. I like the gritty, raw style that Michael Mann brought to this story. However, it's just clumsy, it's unorganized, and just really poorly put together in the sense that we don't really talk about audio editing, and we don't really talk about dubbing and things like that. However, when it becomes such a problem that viewers can look at it and be distracted or realize that lips aren't in sync with the voiceovers or the audio recordings, it's really a problem. And in this movie, there is a scene that honestly felt like watching one of the older Godzilla films where their mouth is moving, the language they were speaking were not matching up, and then you had subtitles on the screen. So I wasn't watching the subtitles because I was too busy saying, wait a minute, their lips aren't matching, are they? Like, they're not speaking. Who's speaking right now? That's a major problem. Excuse me. There were problems with voiceovers throughout the whole entire film. The co-star, the woman that Chris Hemsworth has a relationship with in the film, forgetting her name off the top of my head, she would sound one way, and then when she wasn't on screen, sound a completely different way. The accents were different. A lot of people are criticizing Chris Hemsworth accent. I mean, it's just the audio was a major problem. Bullets sounded different. Gunshots sounded different. I was just really, really confused by that. And to me, that's just... Granted, I understand you can't always afford to go back and reshoot, but you just got to clean it up better, you know. Another major problem that I have is that I felt they had a way overcomplicated plot. And that was the really major downfall for me. You know, with all these things going on that people are into, like, and are aware of through the news, not saying something like this couldn't happen, as James pointed out in our video review. But I think it's a bit extreme and a bit out there for most people to grasp and kind of just accept to be realistic. You know, hacking a company and stealing social security numbers and doing all these things are more logical to me and way more of an easygoing plot to just kind of make more sense rather than the plot that unfolds in this movie. I won't spoil it, but it's kind of ridiculous, and I didn't buy it, and it really just kind of felt way over the top. The whole movie, we learn of this villain, this quote-unquote Black Hat, and, you know, when we finally meet him, he's the most anticlimactic villain I think I've ever seen. Just kind of there and just kind of doesn't have a presence to him, and that's a major issue, especially when you don't show that character through 90% of the movie. Finally, my major issue with the movie is the ending. When there's first of all, Chris Hemsworth becomes a hacker turned into, the character from Taken, Liam Neeson's character, where he just knows how to fight and lethally kill people, and he's just a killing machine, which kind of just doesn't make sense. It just feels like, we're just supposed to accept the fact that he has all this knowledge of being a martial arts, genius.
He is Thor.
Besides the fact that he's the son of Odin, or one of the sons of Odin, and then so there's people getting stabbed, and there are people shooting guns at this festival parade thing, and we have a group of people like being shot, innocent people, and we have like some characters kind of running, and some characters screaming, and some characters just standing there. It just felt really sloppy and very unbelievable. And I don't usually use that term loft because I think I have a huge suspense of belief. I usually am really easy to kind of just say, I'll buy it. But when I say I don't buy it, that's a major problem because, like, I mean, I'm easy to get over on, but I was just like, what is going on? I didn't think Chris Hemsworth did bad. I thought he was okay. I mean, I don't think he had really great stuff to work with. No emotion in the movie, no one to care about, except the one actress that I think I love in everything that she's ever done, and that's Viola Davis. No matter what Viola Davis does, I absolutely love her. So she was good, but even her, she didn't really get much emotion in the movie. So overall, a pretty big disappointment for me.
Just sad, but come to expect in the theater in early January.
Yeah, and that's the thing is, it is January, February, which usually means dump months. And if you don't know what a dump month is, it's kind of all the movies that they just say are just there to try to make $1 and get, they're there so they could put trailers in front of it to get people revved up for the movies in summer.
It's a placeholder.
Exactly. Which, is kind of disappointing, but sometimes it's not always like that. Sometimes they do have really great movies in January and February. I've just not seen any yet. And I don't count American Sniper or Inherent Vice or Selma because those are films from last year that Vegas just will happen to get late.
Yes.
So Black Hat and Wedding Ring are the first films of 2015 that we've actually reviewed. Next week, we're going to be talking about Mordecai, the new film from Johnny Depp, which looks so exciting.
It's going to be great.
and more importantly,
Jeff Goldblum's in it. So
more importantly than that, we have The Boy Next Door, starring J-Lo, starring Jenny from the Block herself. So, you know what? One of them, they might be good. Who knows? Johnny Depp has really changed around kind of his, watching Tusk kind of gave me a new respect for Johnny Depp, for him getting really out of his comfort zone and probably making his lowest grossing film of all time. Granted, I love Kevin Smith, and I don't mean that as to be disrespectful, but I mean Johnny Depp's track record, that movie has to be the lowest grossing film he's ever made. But him and his daughter are teaming up with Kevin Smith and his daughter to make a new film in the second part of the North trilogy, following Tusk, called Yoga Hosers. So that'll be fun. And then this is the best part, guys. After this movie, the trilogy ends with a movie called Moose Jaws, which is exactly what you think. It is Jaws with a moose.
Oh my goodness.
So Kevin Smith, to some, have lost his mind. I think Kevin Smith is doing something that he should have been doing a long time ago and just really having fun and going absolutely crazy. If you've not seen Tusk, I'd highly recommend it. Even though I felt that, it was more like a comedy skit that just kind of ran a little bit too long. But Johnny Depp's awesome in it.
The biggest snubs of the year is no Oscar nominations for Tusk.
It is, man. It really is. All right. So moving on, we're going to be talking about the Academy Awards. We're not going to go in depth and read everything out of the Academy Awards. They're available all sorts of online. We will be talking about some, but the main thing I want to talk about are the few snubs and surprises this year. Louis, what do you think the biggest snub and surprise was out of this year?
Oh, see, this is very difficult because there have been a lot of debate on all the snubs, and there's been quite a few big snubs. For me personally, because we both admire this film so much, is leaving Nightcrawler off the major categories. I know it got nominated for original screenplay, which is great, but I think somewhere in the mix, Jake Gyllenhaal should have been nominated. And even, we got 8 Best Picture nominees. It goes to 10. I think Nightcrawler is deserving at a number 9 spot. Come on, Academy. So obviously that's pretty big. And you cannot talk about snubs without not talking about Selma. Only been nominating for Song and Best Picture, leaving out Best Actor and Best Director, which is pretty crazy to think. I know you're very passionate about that too. But again, Best Actor is very jam-packed this year. Jake Gyllenhaal and David Oyelowo left outside. Thank you. Any other year, they could have been easily nominated. So, it's as much as no film has gone up and take a commanding lead, it has been a jam-packed year, especially in the Best Actor race.
It has, and
even directed to some point.
Yeah, it has been really tough. I think my biggest letdown and my biggest snub is not nominating Ava DuVernay for her work as director for Selma. I think that was the most heartbreaking thing for me. Though I love Nightcrawler and I really want to see that film get nominated, I can understand that not being the type of film they would nominate. I can understand that movie being a little bit more controversial than things we were seeing. Though I love that movie and I feel like it should have been nominated, it didn't. But more importantly, I really was disappointed that they wouldn't give Ava DuVernay that opportunity to be the first black woman nominated. And I think she deserves it. I'm not saying let's nominate. I got this message. I'm not saying that Ava DuVernay needs to be nominated because she's a black woman. I'm saying she's a black woman who deserves to be nominated because she made such a damn good film. And it just really disappoints me that they didn't give her that credit, And there have been a lot of posts who feel that the Academy is, looking for old white guys and that, and that, so I don't necessarily think that it's that biased, but at the same time, there is a a huge lack of diversity in the Academy Awards.
But there's another thing about Selma, and there's been rumors like the screeners went out late, and when the Academy members started voting, they didn't even have the screener. So a lot of these people have not seen the film yet. So that, when you have hearing stories like that, posted on Variety and Hollywood Reporter, that's not too good to start off with. And for those who don't know, someone's been around a long time in like production hell. At one point, Lee Daniels was, taking over the film. So it's been around for at least 4 years trying to get the film off the ground. And I'm sorry, that kind of hurt the film too.
And that could be a possibility. But, if they were nominating it for Best Picture, regardless if it got out late, if they're nominating it for Best Picture, why couldn't they be nominated for other things? But at the same time, I understand. Another major letdown for me was the fact that the Lego Movie didn't get nominated. I think I said it on the podcast or maybe in a video review. That was my choice for frontrunner for Best Animated Film, which means that my film that I actually think deserves to win has a better shot. But at the same time, I'm just so surprised. But I love the response from the creators of the Lego Movie. They, one of the filmmakers built a Oscar out of Legos and responded, "Don't worry, I'll make my own." So more power to him. I think the biggest surprise of the Academy Awards, though, is Whiplash getting an Oscar nomination, which I thought that was just totally awesome. I love that movie. I've talked about it so much. I'm going to be talking about it more later this year, I'm sure. One of the best films in first movie like that, a movie that came from a short to being a movie now. I just think that's awesome. I'm so proud of it. I'm glad that I was able to get nominated. So, I just wanted to kind of briefly talk about the Academy Awards and things like that, and what we felt snubs and surprises. Louis, is there anything else you want to talk about, or
I don't know.
The thing is, guys, I don't want to talk about it too much because we're going to be drowning in it in the next month and a half of just constant award talk and other things. So next week, join us back as Louis and I review Mordecai and Boy Next Door. But that is going to be all for us, folks. Thank you for listening. I know tonight's podcast is a little bit shorter than usual, but we just got so much going on. We got things coming at you next week. We're going to have our top 10 list being read soon. We're going to be talking a lot about awards, so don't worry. We're going to be talking a lot more about the awards than we just did tonight. We know it was kind of brief, but don't worry. There's a lot more to come. Ladies and gentlemen, I am your host, Jacob Toronto.
Louis Corzolo.
And please continue chasing cinema.